January not only brings a flurry of snowflakes and New Year's resolutions, it also brings the start of the Minnesota State Legislative Session. Tonight we're joined by Sheldon Johnson, and he's going to talk about what he has in mind for this session or what he thinks might happen.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. And the upcoming session, yes, that's coming right around the corner here. And I like to frame this session around a couple of basic principles I think that we're going to see happen. And I think they're good principles. One is when we saw the change that occurred this coming fall in terms of this democratic wave occurring, one of the themes or one of the principles I think that was going on was the whole idea of sticking to the basics. There's some core issues I think that people through their votes indicated they want to see occur, sticking with education, healthcare, transportation, property tax issues. So I think you're going to see at the Capitol this year, this coming year, concentration on these core basic issues. That's principle number one. The second idea I think that we're going to see happen, it comes around the idea of civility. I think this is going to be a much more cooperative, collaborative session than we've seen in the past. And that's what I'm expecting, that's what I'm anticipating, that's how I plan to operate. Just this Christmas season, for example, the Governor Pawlenty had us over for cookies and cider
Wow.
and coffee and all that sort of stuff. And it was really kind of fun, and it was indicated to me that, you know, he's opening his door to having this sort of approach to dealing with issues at the Capitol. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you think, you've spent 4 years, or this is the start of your fourth term, I should say, you've been in since 2000.
That's correct.
Do you think, since the House has now moved to Democrat control and the Senate is at Democrat control, do you think that forces Pawlenty to be a little bit more cooperative than he may have been in the years past when he had the House on his side?
Yes, I think there are some definite political dynamics in play there. He's a smart man, clearly, politically as well as otherwise, and I think he knows that we in the House and in the Senate, the Democrats that control those two parts of the legislature, we're going to be putting on his desk bills that have to do with those basic core issues again: health care, education, property taxes, transportation. Those are the things he's going to see, so he might as well. It makes perfect sense, and I think it's also the right thing to do to also look at those issues and see where we can find common ground. I think that's what's going to happen.
You talked about him offering the olive branch by inviting you guys over for holiday cookies. The Democrats have also offered some olive branches by not only seating Democrats in the chairs of their committees. What made you guys decide to go ahead and allow some Republicans?
Well, I think it has to do with the sense that we're getting from the public, and something that I think comes internally from a lot of the elected officials like myself too, which is people want to see a product done. They don't particularly care if it's Democrat in origin or Republican origin. They just want to see some good results coming from the Capitol, and that's my feeling too. And again, by doing that, it indicates not only symbolically but also in a very realistic way that we want to work together collaboratively to make something happen for the best interests of the state.
Now you represent 67B. Can you explain to the residents of St. Paul exactly where that is within our city?
Yeah, it's a variety of neighborhoods. It's Battle Creek, Mounds Park, Eastview, Conway, Highwood. Yeah, those are the neighborhoods that it entails. And I've been living there about 30 years now, and like you said, been in the legislature since year 2000 representing folks. In addition to being a legislator, I'm also a probation officer. I've been a probation officer for about 30 years now, so I know the corrections field fairly well. In fact, this is going to be one of those issues that come up this next legislative session. This whole funding of corrections, such a big one, and particularly want to make sure that we deal with the field side of corrections probation officers and make sure we get them taken care of.
Well, you are on the Public Safety and Committee, right? What kinds of bills do you feel will be spearheaded, or what kinds of things do you want to make sure happen?
Well, I think we need to deal with, first of all, I think the methamphetamine epidemic throughout the state is going to be a big issue, and that's something we're going to have to deal with very directly. And that entails enforcement, education, treatment. All three parts to that issue need to be dealt with, and I think we're going to move in the direction. Again, that's another issue that really doesn't break down Democrat or Republican. I think we all agree that it's an important issue that needs to be dealt with. I was speaking when I was at the governor's mansion the other day with the head staff that's going to lead the methamphetamine task force on this, and he and I are getting together to talk about this later on in a month to come up with some plans to deal with this issue. So that's an example of the kind of issue I think that we really need to work together to make happen.
Getting a head start then. You're also chair of the House Telecom Regulation Infrastructure Division Committee. What will
That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is. And that's a division of the Commerce Committee, right?
Commerce and Labor.
Commerce and Labor. What do you see that committee's role this year? I mean, with some of the things that have been going on with the FCC, some of the things that have been going on in the national level, what do you see the state's role?
Well, that's going to be a very interesting committee, and I've met with a lot of stakeholders or players, if you want to call it, over the last couple of weeks to talk about some of the issues. It ends up being that a lot of the issues stem from the telephone companies, and a lot of issues come from cable companies, and those are kind of two of the big.
And they don't seem to agree.
Giants. They don't always agree on a lot of stuff, and one of the things they don't agree on that we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about is who's going to provide the cable video services to the cities and municipalities throughout the state, and who should provide the contracts essentially to provide these services. Should it come from the national level, should it come from the state level, or should the city do contracts with these individual companies to provide these services? Now, public service or public education, TV, and so forth has a stake in this, and that'll be one of those points that will be an education component to the committee, because a lot of folks don't understand this. It's very complicated, and I'm on a learning curve myself, but we need to understand the role that the public good has in terms of providing information to the public and how that fits into this whole private competitive market. It has an important role to play, and we need to talk about it.
Obviously, yes. And obviously that's a focus of the Access Center here in St. Paul, as well as other Access Centers in Minnesota too, that we would like to make sure that we are a part of that discussion. So
another big issue that needs to be dealt with is what's called build-out, and to make sure that something you may have heard of is the digital divide, which is to say not everyone has access or the availability to get broadband or get on the internet or cable TV and so forth, and how can we make sure that it doesn't just go for one segment of the population, the other segment gets left behind. And then following up with that, what role does the government have in ensuring that, or is this something that the market should be doing? These are the kind of issues we're going to have to talk about that different people have a lot of different opinions on.
Should make for a very interesting session.
Yes, indeed.
What kinds of things do you want to focus directly in for the residents in St. Paul? What kinds of things can they be expecting from the session? What might benefit them?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, we have the Republican convention coming to town. That's going to be, that's always going to be in the mix, because we're going to need some money for the city of St. Paul to provide the sort of infrastructure needs, particularly around public safety, that makes for a safe and enjoyable convention. So that's going to be there. I think a second issue that'll be, I don't know if it'll be second, but another major issue is the Central Corridor, or light rail transit coming from Minneapolis down University Avenue and then downtown St. Paul. So we need to talk some more about how we're going to get this funded, what that's going to look like, what the time frame is, and so forth. This is the #1 priority, really, I think, for the mayor's office and also for the St. Paul delegation. Also, tying in with that is the Union Depot. Just down the road here. We need to upgrade that, because that's really going to be the hub of the transportation activity in the East Metro, and we want to make sure that it's good to go. It's going to take some investment. We need to also think about the planning in terms of the different connections, the rail connections, the bus connections, the light rail transit, the transit coming from northern Minnesota up by Rush City, the Rush Line. You know, we got to think thoroughly about how to make this happen.